Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 161, where I'm going to help you get a quick boost of fondness and love for your spouse. So today's episode is really a quick dip into an absolutely essential part of building and maintaining a great relationship with your partner. Really consciously fostering fondness for them, for your spouse. And I have done other episodes along these lines, but I really can't repeat myself often enough when it comes to this. We really all do need, I believe, reminders and slightly new approaches to keep building in more of all the good stuff in our relationship. So dive in for a quick and solid dose of more fondness of that person that you've chosen as your life partner. And really only goodness can come of the 5 minutes it will take you to boost that today. It'll take 5 minutes or maybe even less. Once I get to that part, I'm going to give you a little bit of background first. So over the years of doing this work that I do, of helping people have great marriages, I've found that for each and every single one of us, which means for you, there's one of 3 core areas that you need to focus on at this point in time. These 3 areas are really at the source, the very, very source of what's not going well in your relationship and what will make it go well. And there's one primary area that's most important for you to focus on first. And when you focus on this one area and you make some good changes in this area, you're going to see your relationship improve quickly. So I actually recently made a quiz to help you determine which area that is for you. And that quiz, I called it something else before. I recently changed the name because I like this name better. It's now called What's Your Best Next Step? What's your best next step to improve your marriage? So if you haven't taken that quiz yet, it takes like 2 minutes. There's literally only 6 questions, but it's going to identify the area that will be most effective for you to focus on first. And then it will give you very detailed specifics about how to start focusing on that area, what exactly to do to improve your marriage right away. So if you haven't taken the quiz yet, you've got to go do so. You can either do it right now before we dive in, or you can do it right after you listen to the episode, but you'll find the link to take that quiz in the description for this podcast or over at my website. It's www.lifeisworthloving.com, and you'll see it there on the homepage if you just kind of look around. So definitely go do that. Now, for some of you, the most important area is going to be all about growing your capacity to love and believe in your own self, like who you are, including your sensitivity if you're a highly sensitive person. This is really about accepting, loving, believing in all parts of yourself, which even if it doesn't make a ton of sense right now to you, it really is a non-negotiable if you want a great relationship and deep connected intimacy in your relationship, and if you want that to really last. For others of you, learning how to move through and out of, quote, negative emotion is going to be your first area of focus, like the most important area for you to focus on first, because hard emotions bog us down. And when we have a lot of them and we're experiencing a lot of them around our relationship or just in general in our lives, it makes it really difficult not only to just feel good with your spouse, but also to effectively make any real change in your relationship, right? So we want to, for some of you, that's going to be the most powerful place to start or work first. And for others of you still, your effort will best be channeled into learning how to move into emotions that foster love and connection. Like that's the most powerful work for you at first. And that's actually what we're going to focus on, of course, today in a moment. Now, of course, all three of these areas are important for everyone to get great at if you want a great relationship. And being strong in all three areas will also give you the best chance at really an overall great life. Like these things, like I said earlier, they're so core to our well-being in our own lives and definitely in our relationships. But for each of you, one area is going to be the most important one for you to focus on right away, right now. And then you can move into the next most important one. So today we're going to talk about one of them, this third one, because some of you will want to make this your primary area of focus. And others of you, again, will want to focus more on one of the other areas, but you're still going to benefit a ton by doing what I suggest today, even if the other areas or one of the other areas is more your prime area that needs to be focused on now. In other words, what we're going to do today will never hurt and will really only help. So again, to find out your area of most important focus, go ahead and go take that free quiz. What's your best next step to improve your marriage? And you can actually take the quiz twice to find out the second most important area of focus if you want to. That can be kind of fun. So if you've already taken it, or you can go ahead and just take it twice in a row. And if you're looking for that second area of focus, just answer with your second most honest answer, right? Your second choice answer. There's three options, like it's a multiple choice kind of quiz. So there's three options for each question. So just choose the second one for that second area. All right, so let's talk about one piece of moving into emotions that foster love and connection. Like, how do we do that? Let's talk about one piece. Now, I want to be clear that learning how to move into these emotions that foster love and connection, which is this core skill, this really does not mean only like moving into only lovey-dovey or super quote unquote positive emotions. It actually can mean moving into emotions or learning to be with emotions like vulnerability and courage and willingness, all of which don't actually feel great, but they'll really help you get to more connection and love when you know how to work with them, when you know how to be in them in a way, in a peaceful way. And when you know how to use them, well, we could just say. But today, like I've already said, we're going to focus on building up a sense of, quote, fondness for your spouse. And just so you know what fondness means, it's kind of a funny word. We don't necessarily use it all the time in our modern English. But synonyms for fondness include affection, love, liking, warmth, tenderness, kindness, devotion, care, endearment, attachment, closeness, friendliness, intimacy, regard, respect, admiration, adoration, right? So it's a pretty great word. Fondness encapsulates all of that. And I know in our intimate relationships with this person we're spending our life with, of course, these are the feelings we want. These are some of the most important feelings, yeah? So we want to feel fondness because from fondness comes, well, not only does it feel good, but from feeling that feeling comes warm and loving ways of interacting, of communicating. And really a sense of lightness and joy with each other comes from there, as well as respect and supportiveness and really all the good things, right? So much of what we value as women in our relationships really does spawn. It's not the right word. That's the word that came to me. Spawn from fondness, right? It comes out of, these things are come downstream of feeling fondness for our spouse. So feeling fondness and admiration for your partner are really crucial elements of a fulfilling and happy life together. They're even a foundation for feeling passion and romance again between you. I've actually mentioned this before on the podcast, but I'm going to say it again. Research has shown that what determines whether we feel satisfied with the romance and passion in our marriage is, by 70%, how good our friendship with our partner is. And a good friendship is in large part determined by how much fondness we feel for each other. So fondness really matters, my friends. It really matters in our intimate relationships. But here's the big but, right? There's that lizard brain that we have that you've heard me talking about if you've been following the podcast at all. The lizard brain is kind of this part of us, and I like to think of it as it's kind of like a combination of the negativity bias in our brain and the confirmation bias in our brain, among other aspects of our brain. I'm not going to get all technical here, but it's really these parts of our brains that are built to focus on and see what is wrong, like what isn't so good, what is bad, what isn't so respect and fondness worthy in our partner. Right? So in our intimate relationships, we tend to see more and more of what's not so good about our spouse over time. And I have various episodes that go more into depth on this. And if you've never heard me talk about this or you don't understand this, it's like such a basic and key understanding about relationships because our brains are so much of what create a good relationship or a bad relationship. So we need to understand like how they operate to really be able to improve our relationships significantly or at all. So again, I have various episodes that go into more depth on this, including there's one that's called The 2 Brain Biases That Work Against Love. That's episode 74. And episode 20, which is called Turn Your Not So Good Husband Into an Amazing One, the First Step. So those are good places to get started, although I definitely talk about this in other episodes as well. So have a listen if that sounds interesting to you. But my point today is, yes, we innately have this lizard brain that likes to see what's wrong with our spouse and everything, but you can actually do something about that. You can intentionally and on purpose and consistently, actively build fondness. Like we don't just have to like be sort of at the mercy of this flaw-seeking part of our brain and just keep feeling worse and worse in our relationship. We can consciously and actively build the good stuff by focusing on it. And you're really going to need to do that if you want real, lasting, deep love between you and your partner. So please know that this is not just some kind of sweet or hokey idea that I made up. This is really based on a solid body of research about what makes marriages work and relationships work. And part of that research shows that where we put our attention matters. So I've shared a lot on the podcast about how I personally build fondness regularly in my marriage, like on purpose, right? I actively look for things I admire in my husband every day. Now, I no longer just like sit down and write them down in lists like I used to do. I did that for a while. It helped me build ease with doing this regularly. But these days, I make it a point to just kind of metaphorically put on those love glasses that I've talked about in other episodes, like those glasses. They're not actually real glasses, but it's like imagine you're putting on a pair of glasses through which you can see the good things about your partner. And I like to think of these as seeing clear, or like clear seeing glasses, right? Because they don't have the negativity bias. They're not flaw-seeking glasses. They're just really seeing what's actually there. They're not necessarily over glorifying or painting a fake rosy picture, right? We don't necessarily want to do that. We want to be able to see through clear lenses what's great and good about our partner instead of through distorted lenses that magnify the bad, which is what our brains tend to do when left to run on autopilot. So when I'm putting my attention on what's wonderful, like as I do that, it really keeps me connected to my admiration of him and my warmth of heart for him, my love for him. And it truly makes it easy for me to show up respectfully, lovingly, and really in ways that invite the best connection and generate the best times and the deepest love between me and my husband. Really, this is a huge part of why my marriage is so sweet and loving and connected so many years in. My conscious and ongoing building of my fondness for my husband, even though he has his flaws, it's been key to having a great relationship for me. And I want that for you too. So let's dive in right now with my 5 questions that I have for you. These are really the tips to build more of that sense of fondness. This is your little practice for that quick boost of fondness and love. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions because asking your brain good questions and guiding your brain to answer those questions is one of the very, very best ways to guide our attention and ultimately fuel this fondness. So I'm going to ask you 5 of them, 1 question at a time. You can get out a pen or note them down somewhere if you want. That's a great idea. And of course, there are many other questions you can ask yourself. So I'm just asking you 5 to help you get the idea and help you get started. So I'm going to ask them in just a moment, and I want you to answer each of them one at a time with 3 answers each. So you're not just answering with 1 answer, but you're going to find 3 answers for each question. And I think you're going to see what I mean in the way that I phrase each question in a moment. So if you need to, and I actually recommend it, you can pause the episode to fully answer each question. And then after each answer, I invite you to pause and really notice what it feels like to see your answers. And let that feeling sink in for 30 seconds or so. And I'll remind you of that in a minute. As a note before I ask you these questions, be careful when I ask the question and you're trying to find the answers. Don't let your brain go into kind of, I don't know, or I can't find an answer mode, or like, worse than that, like, I don't like anything about him, I must not like him mode, right? Or like, don't let yourself use these questions to kind of fall into despair or not seeing his good qualities. Like sometimes when we ask questions that try to point our brain to like, what's good about your partner? Our brain's like, nothing. There's nothing. Oh no, right? And then we kind of spin out. It's like, oh no, I can't think of anything good. He must not be a good person. He must not be right for me. I must not like him. I must not care about him, right? So really, I highly suggest that if that happens, that's okay if it starts to happen. Like our brains are kind of wily creatures sometimes, but just gently and firmly guide your brain back to the actual question and help it come up with 3 answers, 3 pieces of evidence to answer the question. I promise if you set your mind to it, you will find answers. It can take a little while at first, especially if your brain's been used to looking at what's wrong with your partner and focusing on the bad for a while, which is fairly normal. So just take your brain by the hand to be like, hey, little brain, we're going to actually answer this question and we're not going to fall into anything else right now. All right. So here are your questions. Are you ready? Number 1, how are you and your honey good companions? Come up with 3 ways that you're good companions. And go ahead and pause and answer that. Or you can write this down and come back to answering it after I've read through all of the questions. Question 2. What 3 characteristics do I like about my partner? So an example here might be he's smart, or he's respectful, or he's goofy, or he's organized, or motivated, or grounded, or good with kids, or artistic, etc. Right? So what 3 characteristics do I like about him? Next question. How is it true that my spouse is an interesting person? List 3 ways. How is it true my spouse is an interesting person? Question 4. What are 3 ways my spouse is cute? And your answer here can be physically or just in his behavior. For example, I think my husband is cute that he gets so enthusiastic about certain things, and he likes to repeat. Like when something is good, he likes to bring it up a lot and be like, isn't this so great? We have such a great house. That kind of thing. It's cute. So what are 3 ways your spouse is cute? And question 5, what are 3 ways you and your spouse have a good time together? And if that's a little challenging to answer right now, I think that could be the most challenging question, especially if you're not having great times together, is think back to the past and what are 3 ways we have had good times together in the past. Okay, if you haven't paused and answered these questions, then go ahead and do that now. Okay, I'm assuming you paused it, you answered your questions, and now I want you to notice how it feels. How does it feel to see and come up with these answers? What emotions come up for you? And you may just answer one of these questions and then sense what that feels like, right? If you've come up with some answers to that question, you're going to feel some more, even if it's just a subtle stirring of more fondness, of more liking, of more warmth, of more just positivity towards your partner. You're gonna have a stirring of that, even if it's just a little bit. So my invitation now is to soak up that feeling, sit with it, feel it on purpose for 11 to 30 seconds or more. And that's the amount of time that research has found it takes to really wire in and kind of override the tendency to focus on the bad. So wire in that the feeling of fondness or whatever positive feeling you're feeling, and override the tendency to focus on the bad. Meaning, this is really key to building what I call a lasting love brain, and really a sense of admiration and fondness, and making that more and more the default state. When you can wire this into your brain in this way by literally calling that feeling up, by asking good questions, and then sinking into the feeling, you're literally making your brain more able to feel fondness and warmth and love on the regular, because you have more, you're literally growing more neurocircuitry that's dedicated to feeling those feelings. Pretty cool, huh? So it's really worth it to spend the time that it takes. Now, as always, this is just one of many ways to support yourself and your relationship into much more fondness and grow not just the friendship and connection and love, but also the passion between you and your honey. So please know that this is just the beginning. And if you know that you have some work to do to know how to move into more connection and love with your spouse, you can find out more on how to when you take the quiz. What's your best next step to improve your marriage? When you take the quiz, you might discover that that is actually not the most important area for you to focus on first. Often, like I said earlier, there are other areas that need to be focused on first before you're able to successfully foster more connection and fondness. So if this exercise that I shared just now was not so easy for you or was pretty hard, it probably means that one of the other areas is more important for you to focus on first. So don't miss the quiz. Go over and take that quiz, because it's going to give you the specific area you need to focus on and some of the important work to do in that area. It give you tangible things to do. I really love this quiz because it helps me help you in a much more personalized and targeted way than I can even do on this podcast. It's the next best step to coaching with me, right? Obviously when you coach directly with me, it's 100% targeted, personalized, and absolutely the best way to make change in your relationship and in yourself. But this quiz is the closest I can come without actually being there with you and directing you personally. So head over to the show notes and take that quiz. And also, especially if this wasn't super hard for you to do, start practicing this. Like, I challenge you to do this for a week. Answer all these questions for a week. Maybe you'll find you'll come up with different answers every day, and just let yourself spend that 5 minutes that it takes to answer these questions and sit in the feelings for 30 seconds or so. It will help you step into more and more sense of fondness and connection and love for your partner. And that's really just only going to make it easier to effectively make the changes you want and just feel great in your relationship. So enjoy that and be oh so well.